tell me 3 good things that happened this weekend for y'all.
My team had their first scrimmage against each other. We don't get to actually compete, but we still had a scrimmage.
Well, that's good. How did it go?
I mean, OSU won no matter what, right?
Yeah.
It was good. It went really smooth.
So y'all aren't getting to compete at all?
Not in the fall. Like, as of now, we're competing in January when we get back. So,
Gotcha. Fingers crossed. Anybody else have something good happen?
I got to see some friends I don't get to see very often.
Good. Did they come here or you go there?
They came here.
Nice. Seeing friends is always good.
Family time with my mom.
Oh, y'all do anything special?
We watched the game and had some more days.
Nice. Like I said, we won and OU lost again. It's all good. It's all good. Awesome. Well, let's hear it. What are y'all's first reactions to Place at the Table when you watched it?
I was sobbing.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
It was just so sad. That little girl, the little kids just got me.
Yeah. What else?
We need a lot better system than what we have.
What we have is just not working. So regardless of what we think solutions are, I think we can all agree what we have is not working. Okay? That's a good point.
It made me realize how lucky I was that like my parents literally met my basic needs and like how much more like that set me up to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, not to but that's kind of the definition of privilege and understanding the privileges that we do have. And it's not a bad thing if we have them, it's just acknowledging that they're there, right? And sometimes we're not even aware of what those things may be until we see a film like this and realize, whoa, that's not as easy as I thought it was. Other thoughts?
That's kind of just the same thing I thought. It's just we don't realize how lucky we are until we get to like somewhere where we can see it. Because nobody, like in high school, nobody talks about that kind of stuff. And like it takes till we're in college to actually learn about it.
Did any of y'all grow up with people that you knew were in that situation? Not just like, oh, you knew them because of somebody, but like you were friends with them.
Yeah.
What was that like for them?
I had a friend that had like, it was her and like her 2 brothers and her little baby sister. And the dad was the only one that worked. So they were on food stamps.
Anybody else? What was it like for the person you knew?
My sister, so I have a half sister and she lived with her mom and her mom had 2 more kids. And so my sister took on like the full responsibility of like being a mother at like 13, if not younger. And like even with like my dad like taking like them to court and like getting custody, like my sister had no desire to leave them because like that's what she was doing. So she would always take groceries. Like my dad was buying groceries for them because like my sister's 14 years old, like she can't do anything, and like she didn't feel right to like leave, and like the grandparents didn't do anything, and mom worked but didn't work like efficiently. And so it's like crazy to like watch how my sister raises her kid now that she is like independent and has a job. And so that was like really hard to watch because like she didn't want to take help, but like she needed it, and she felt like embarrassed even like with family. So
This film didn't specifically talk about it as a source of like financial help, but a lot of payday loan services assist as well. And so like my best friend growing up, she was the oldest and had 3 siblings. Her mom, until we were in middle school, her mom and dad both worked, but her mom had a mental illness. And because of her mental illness, attempted suicide, which caused her to have a lifelong disability, and she's no longer able to work now. And so my friend had to take on that role of working full time because what her dad made wasn't enough for all 4 of them. And there are times that I would go with my friend for her to get a payday loan just to help her family get groceries through that week, because if she didn't get that advance, they weren't going to have enough cash that week for food. Anybody else have a close connection to food insecurity?
Growing up, there was this girl in my class, and she had an older brother, and you could just tell that they'd been beaten a lot. And so one day, sometimes I'm just way too open for my own good, and I was just like, so what's going on? She's like, if we eat my dad's food, we get beaten. And she's like, if we eat too much at school and it's more than he had, like, and I was like, I didn't think of anything like that, and it was because they were on food stamps, and all the food would go to the parents, not them. And so I talked to my mom about it, and she was like, you know, when I was a kid, her dad was on Medicaid, and so they got all the drugs paid for. And ultimately, I was in high school and everything. She was a single mom, and she's like, I will never use food stamps. I will never get on this, because like what I had to deal with when I was a kid, seeing like all my friends, there was 5 kids in my class, all of them on food stamps got beaten by their parents. She's like, I just didn't think much of it as a kid until I watched that, and I'm like, this happened right under my nose all the time.
Was there anything else in the film that shocked you, or perhaps changed a misconception maybe you had about families that are on different government assistance programs, specifically?
We kind of talked about it before. We watched the film, but like how that one mom that I think Angel was her name, or Angela or something. She like wanted to go to college and stuff, but how she said like, I can't tell my kids that they can eat in 2 years and I'm done with college. And my dad called me when I was in the middle of watching the movie, and I was like crying. I was like, Dad, I'm watching this movie and it's really sad because these kids don't have to eat. And he was kind of like the same way a lot of us thought, like they could get money if they really wanted it. They could work for it if they really wanted to. And I was like, no, Dad, like she is working, but she still doesn't make enough money to pay her bills and get groceries for the whole entire month. And I like explain like what a food desert was and stuff, because he was like, well, that's not true because vegetables are cheaper than chips. And I was like, yeah, but Dad, there's places in the country where people can't get vegetables. And I was like, so sad.
So, you bring up a good point, Stephanie. Like, what are some of those structural things that are contributing to this problem of insecurity, food insecurity? So, I hope, by us watching this film, we kind of are lessening our attitude that it's so much of an individual problem. Again, we talk about people don't lack motivation, they just have different reasons why. I think here it's not just that people don't want to feed their kids, there's other things happening. What are some of those structural things that are contributing to food insecurity? Stephanie named one of them. What is it about income?
Maybe the number of hours you work at a job, but you don't make enough money.
Number of hours you work at a job, you don't make enough money.
I don't know if this is it, but like, if they go above like a certain line, just barely, like they lose their child care.
Yeah.
Like that floored my mind.
Yeah, didn't she talk
Did you
about
work
how
a
one time
dollar
she made
over?
$6 a buck? $6! That's 1 cup of coffee at Aspen, right? Like a good cup of coffee. Maybe 2.
Wasn't it for like in a whole entire year
Yeah.
above being able to get food stamps?
Do y'all know how much child care averages?
Too much.
Any ideas? Take some guess.
Whenever I worked at the daycare in Noble, just for 3 kids, it was over $1,000 a month just to send their 3 kids.
So I sent Wilk to a home daycare, which is less expensive than a daycare facility, and it cost $160 a week. Any of y'all got that to spit out every week? No, it's significant, and that's on the cheap side. And we're in Stillwater. If we were to move to Edmond, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, that amount would increase quite a bit. So losing childcare just by having this kind of arbitrary income level, right? What else? Yes?
That the food they talked about the food stamp diet, and it's $3 a day or something, is that right? I think $3 a day. That's
Yeah.
just not even good enough, I don't think.
Well, we'll learn about that for sure. What else? What are some other structural things that may be contributing to people's food insecurity?
I thought that they made, I don't remember who it was that made this point, that the food pantries, it is a long-term solution, because you're just counting out the goodness out of people's hearts. It's not actually fixing anything.
Absolutely. Goodness to people's hearts. You know, I'm sure you'll see here, even with our daily bread, they go through periods where they're really asking for donations because we are finicky human beings. Sometimes we donate a lot, sometimes we don't donate any. What do you think food pantries prefer? Food donations or money?
Money.
Why do they prefer money?
Because they can buy whenever they need to.
Yeah, so food pantries work with the regional food banks, and so oftentimes they're getting food at a discounted cost because that food has already been donated to the food bank. And so their money can go a lot further in the amount they can buy than you giving them 50 jars of peanut butter or 10 cans of green beans that you didn't want to cook. You know, oftentimes the food that people donate to are the leftover things that they don't use that nobody would cook. I mean, I've seen in a food pantry, you gotta use butter chestnuts on a normal basis in your recipes. So why would we think that that would be food that needed to be donated? What, you know, there's other stuff they could purchase with that. So yeah.
You know, growing up, we had a food drive at our school because we have there's a lot of families within the community who need that extra help. So around like Christmas, Thanksgiving time, we would collect stuff. And so our FFA chapter did, we were in charge of that, and so we had to go through everything. You'd be surprised how many were expired or just completely damaged goods.
Yep. Again, I think about it, if you benefit it to your own family, why do we donate it? They're not second-class citizens, they're human beings, same as we are, you know? What are some other structural things that can put food in? Okay, so what's a food desert? Refresh us.
It's like where they start accepting, like food stamps at gas stations because like they don't have access to a grocery store for miles or adequate access, I guess I should say.
Did you see in the news this weekend where they ended up getting like a market in one of the food deserts here in Oklahoma?
Mm-hmm. Great. Can you tell the class kind of about it?
I just saw where it, just hold on for a second, I just saw where it said food desert and I was like, I just watched this movie about it, so.
Yeah. So, you know, and it's interesting, again, kind of depending on population, how they determine it, sometimes it's based off of drivable miles. But, you know, like if you're in a city, sometimes it's based off of walking miles, right? Like if you have to walk more than 2 miles to get to a grocery store, that can be cumbersome and because of the time, right, that takes. Do y'all remember from the film how long it took the mom to go get groceries to be able to buy fruits and vegetables?
30 minutes.
30 minutes on a bus, you know, 30 minutes to an hour shopping, 30 minutes back on the bus, plus walking distance to get to the bus, just to go to the grocery store. How long does it take y'all to go grocery shopping by the time you leave your apartment or house and get back?
Here it doesn't take me long, but like back home, granted like our town just got a Dollar General, so I guess we aren't like food desert, but like it took us to get to like a decent grocery store. It took us 30 to 45 minutes just to get there, and then like we would make a trip once a week just because it did take so long. And I mean, we would spend hours there. So
Does y'all's Dollar General have fresh produce?
no.
So y'all would still be considered a food desert
Yeah.
then?
That's what I was thinking, because Walmart, I mean, we have 3 Walmarts here in Stillwater, but you have to have a certain population for a Walmart. So then Family Dollar or Dollar General pops into a little small town that just has like convenience store items. Like I was driving through West Oklahoma. God bless them. Like I was seriously watching the documentary with headphones on, and I looked up, and I saw like a Dollar General every, I don't know, 45 miles, and I was like, what are they providing? So yeah, then I got frustrated.
The only
I think a lot for,
the only Dollar General I've ever seen in Tishomingo, they actually have fresh produce, and that's the only Dollar
Really?
General
I
I've
think
ever
like the
seen.
newer ones have produce, but like our old one, and I call it old, but like it is old to me. No. It definitely looks like a rough-in Dollar General.
I'd say within like maybe an hour radius and everything, we have $3 Generals. And if there was a convenience store in town, because we got a new Dollar General for how many people and like how close it was to a college town. Since there was a grocery store in town with that, Dollar General didn't have to have fresh produce. But our one up in Anthony, they didn't, because their IGA was going out, so they started having fresh produce there. So I think it's kind of like what the town decides sometimes. And a lot of towns, because it's more money for the town. But like in our area, it just made sense to want all the fresh produce, especially during harvest and everything. So if towns are willing to pay that amount of money for extra, they're usually willing to.
Do y'all remember from the film the discussion about why maybe some of these Dollar Generals and stuff have a hard time getting fresh produce? Like, what causes that? You know, wouldn't you just think a truck could roll on by and drop off a pallet of whatever? What's driving the lack of fresh produce available?
Just getting it there.
Isn't that what the truck driver said on the film? It said, like in these food deserts and everything, it costs too much and it takes too much time to go out of their way instead of just going to, a grocery store.
It's so much easier. It's economies of scale, right? Like they're dealing with fuel charges and time and all that. It's easier to be driving on an interstate and just get off this exit, deliver, get back on. Get off the next exit, deliver, get back on. Than to have to drive 45 minutes, maybe down a 2-lane little highway, deliver 2 pallets of food, because again, it's maybe a lower population, and then travel another 45 minutes back to do all of that. Any suggestions on how to fix that? Can we?
Drones.
Drones.
I was thinking like an Amazon setup, like they have those smaller vans and they'll go out of their way to deliver like a box of almonds or something. So if we could like have not Amazon, but like little distributions in places we know aren't getting proper food, then maybe we could figure it out with like smaller vehicles and more specialized routes.
That would be interesting. It is interesting with those deliveries from Amazon. So in rural areas, they actually partner with the post office to provide those deliveries. So like Amazon will go from their main distribution to whatever the bigger city is, and then they start hitting off like the postal service to provide that. And do y'all think that there's been issues with that lately?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how many of y'all have had issues with 2-day shipping? So I'm like, is that really even a thing anymore? But it's because a lot of times they source out to rural areas and there's been issues with the postal service. Other thoughts from the film, just of things that caught you off guard or surprised you?
I think
The
it's
teacher, like, how she was one of those that didn't know where her next meal was coming from.
The teacher, yeah. Were y'all surprised to see them highlight that town in Colorado? I mean, I'll just ask it. How many of y'all assumed, okay, this is going to be film about food insecurity and it's going to take place in big cities and it's going to, but really it focused a lot on the small rural town. Were there anything about the situation in that town that surprised you?
I think coming from a small town and seeing like whenever we do have kids who are food insecure or don't come from good homes or anything, a lot of our churches or different people in our community will go in and fix the houses or go make sure that the kids get a meal. And seeing communities not do that, because it's just, that's what we do in our area. And that was kind of crazy to me.
Even to do that stuff though, you've got to have money, right? And did it seem like the town as a whole had a high income bracket of people who would even be able to afford to help do that kind of stuff? No. What did y'all think of the police officer in that town? What was his story?
Like, everything you would get for a month would maybe last like 2 weeks.
Yeah. So his income hadn't changed in 4 years. And I mean, would we all agree being a police officer is a good job? You would say, yeah. But because his income hadn't changed, the cost of living just as a whole has risen so much that what his family used to spend in a month on groceries now would only last them 2 weeks. And so his family was having to use the local food pantry even though he had a good full-time job. I think the first time I watched it, that was one of the misconceptions for me that changed, is that, you know, it's not just that people don't want good jobs. A lot of people have good jobs. And just the cost of living doesn't match up with the income that's being given there. Is there anything that town can do to fix the problem of food insecurity in their town? Where would you start?
Well, last week when we were talking a little bit about this, I was thinking, like, why isn't there some type of city, like, control on the cost of, like, housing? Like, why can't housing markets just keep rising and nothing else does?
It's like government, like.
Yeah.
Well, first, the land values never depreciate.
Yeah.
That's just a given. Like, the land is the one thing you can invest in that will never depreciate. The value will always increase because it's that supply and demand, right? The more people own land, the less land's available, price is gonna go up. But then it's just like now, right now with the cost of building houses, because of fires, because of COVID, all this, I think I read in the news last week that the cost of lumber as a whole has increased by 20%. And so right now they're saying if you build a new house, expect there to be almost $25,000 additional dollars you'll pay just because of the increase in lumber. Same thing happens with steel. I mean, we're using non-renewable resources sometimes for these things. And so it's all, we are a capitalistic, pure capitalistic society when it comes to our economy, which runs off of supply and demand, right? And so that's going to control the price. We can't really have a whole lot of things that interfere with that if that's going to be the mainstay of how our economy works. There's a lot of factors there. And then the value of your home determines your taxes, right? But if you have folks who don't have well-paying jobs, is there a lot of tax revenue being generated in that town? You know, I think one of the first places a town like that, and I mean, I grew up in a town similar, is trying to look at how do you try to attract higher paying jobs into that area. Because I would bet they have a low unemployment rate, but that still doesn't mean that they're not food insecure.
I thought it was pretty interesting how there was like the 2 or 3 generation homes, just because they can't afford to move anywhere else.
How much does it cost to move? Any of y'all, like your family moved, and you asked your parents, what was the cost of this?
So my parents moved last year. My grandparents were having health issues. They moved from Virginia to Missouri, and in total, moving like literally 20 years worth of living in a house, it cost around $20,000 with the different U-Haul trucks and just different plane tickets to fly from here to there to make different trips. It was, I mean, when you move 20 years worth of stuff, you can't get that in one truck. You might as well try and get a semi, but like my dad couldn't drive a semi anymore. But it's expensive, and I mean, that's why a lot of job companies today, why they offer moving expenses, because you go to U-Haul and they give you that $2,500 bill, and you're like, well, I can't go take that job. I don't have $2,000 to move. So it's a big deciding factor for people, especially when they could have better opportunities in another state. They might not have the resources to leave their state, to leave their home. So it's a big thing too.
I mean, it's been 4 years now, but when we moved out here for me to start my doctorate, I had just won a new four-wheeler from Alabama Farm Bureau, and we sold it to pay to be able to move out here. Like, I don't even think we got to ride it once. It was one of those, like, I felt like it was a very adult decision that we made, because it's like, oh, I just won this, like, how cool is that? And literally 2 weeks later, turned around and sold it to pay for a moving truck. So y'all posted questions that you had from the film. I want to open up the floor for y'all to facilitate discussion amongst yourselves, to kind of maybe get some answers to some of the questions that y'all asked. So I'm opening it up, and whoever wants to take the lead, go. And if you don't remember your exact question, that's fine.
So one of the statistics that I heard on the video was 70% of the subsidy money provided goes to only 10% of the farmers. And I thought that was super interesting. And they showed the graph because of what types of crops were being grown and what was being subsidized. So I was thinking, what would happen if we were to subsidize more fruit and vegetables? If that would possibly help.
Take ag policy, you'll learn all about the farm bill and different subsidies and stuff like that. We're going through that right now.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
So what would they say in ag policy?
In my ag policy.
It's a rough class.
It's a big deal. That's all I'm
So
saying.
it is interesting because, and y'all will read this a little bit in some of your stuff for next week. From just strictly an economist point of view, they claim that subsidizing fruits and vegetables won't solve the problem. Because economists believe in consumer behavior drives everything. But again, one thing you have to realize, when economists run models or like testing, it's a very black and white world as far as they take one variable and another variable and they test them against each other. Is life that clear cut? No, there's usually multiple things happening. And so they never really have just a perfect model that completely describes how life works. And I say that having an ag econ background. It just doesn't answer all the questions. And so from an economist standpoint, they'll say, no, subsidies aren't going to do it because we don't know that it'll change consumer behavior. But if we were to step beyond that, what would your thoughts be? We know that subsidizing lowers the cost that consumers pay. Do you think a lower cost would change behavior? Would more people purchase fruits and vegetables?
I think on food stands they want to, but they, like the one female, she's like, I want to buy the fruit, but if you compare it to a bag of chips, it's cheaper to buy the chips, so we're gonna have to buy the chips so we can make this money stretch longer. So I think if the fruit and vegetables were cheaper, they would give them the option. Because even on clearance, she's like, whenever they're on sale, I try to buy them. But at like regular cost, she just can't afford it and be able to afford everything else that they need.
I feel like that's some of them, but I feel like there's also a need for an education there too as well.
How so?
As in just to give people nutritional information, it's like, hey, this is good for your children. So I feel like a lot of people, they just don't really know that. I mean, you think it'd be obvious, but some just don't.
Well, that comes back to like nutrition education too, that like one apple provides more nutrients than a bag of chips, but the bag of chips seems like a lot more in volume, comparison there. That's a bit, you can eat 3 ounces of beef and sustain your hunger because of the amount of protein, whereas if you just ate carbohydrates, you'd probably want to eat every 2 hours, that kind of thing.
I think trying to figure out how else to eat it, because I get tired of eating the same thing. So if I were to buy the same fruits and vegetables, then that would also get tiring. And so just trying to come up with different ideas of how to prepare food.
like I think, like, for me, the gym that I go to and my trainer, like, she's really good about, like, and it makes me feel really guilty some days, where she'll, like, post a picture of, like, what I would normally eat, and then a healthier version, and yeah, it has 5 ingredients instead of the 2 ingredients, but the more nutrition factor that I'm getting out of it, or like a bag of chips compared to an apple, kind of like you said, she shows that, and like, I think if we were able to show people that, they would get that type of education as well, but also see it. You know, you tell people and they're like, yeah, but once you like see the numbers, I think it would show them, like, so.
I agree with what you're saying and like the education, because I do think that's really important, but like they can have like all of this information in front of them, but like if like they can buy a 12-pack of ramen noodles for what they could buy 5 apples for, if that makes sense. So it still like comes down to like the economics of it and like the financial stability, because like yes, like the education would be so beneficial, and like if they understood that like, hey, like these apples, these fruits and vegetables like are really like nutritious and provide everything you need, but at the same time, like kids get home from school, they want a snack.
But my question is if they ate healthier, would they eat less non-healthy food? Does that make sense?
I think at the end of the day, they're still children, and children still really want pizza rolls.
No, and I get that, but like if you think about it, like if you eat apples and it fills you up with just 1 apple instead of a bag of chips, and that's a complete bag of chips that should have 3 to 4 servings. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, they're gonna eat less per se, so they should be able to afford somewhat more of a nutritional.
I think to a point, but there was like, when I did, when I was first elementary education, we had a talk about all of this. And there's been so many studies that moms who only make their kids eat vegetables, fruits, like really, really healthy meals, and not give them like any candy, anything else, they'll ultimately go to school, and if they see anything that their friends are eating, they will ultimately eat that. And their mind's telling them that, oh, we don't get that, so you want that. And I don't think giving them consistently fruits and vegetables and trying to completely change their diet is gonna help any. I think these parents are just trying to find something that will fill their kids up. And if you get a large bag of chips, that can last you for a week compared to an apple that can feed your kid for one night.
One time.
What are y'all's thoughts in general about subsidies? So like that, tell them that statistic again.
70% of the subsidy money goes to 10% of the farmers.
I didn't know that from the video they said that the reason they give them, the reason for that statistic is because the larger farms that are producing the things that are higher in demand, right, like soybean, wheat, and those are the 2 I can think of off the top of my head. They do that because those are the higher demand things that you need for like chips and processed things and stuff, right?
I thought it was pretty interesting because it's encouraging more corporation type farming than the small farmers.
Is there like a misunderstanding to, do we need to educate people more about small and large farmers and what subsidies do for small and large farmers and how it affects like the whole entire process of how it affects those small farmers, and then how it in turn affects how you can buy healthier foods?
Yeah, but you gotta think about too, the structure of subsidies as a I mean, it is a government program. We do have a tendency in agriculture not to say that, but it is a government program. And so that's the big thing with the Farm Bill, is a budget's passed for it. So it's a limited amount of money. And so why are the larger farms, and again, some of these large farms are technically family farms. Tyson is technically a family farm, y'all didn't know that. But why are these larger farms getting the bulk of the money?
Can produce food faster, larger amounts of it.
Yeah, they produce more. And so it almost doesn't matter whether we educate smaller farmers to apply or do whatever, there's only so much money, and the most amount of money is gonna go to the people with the most amount of land, because that's what it's based, subsidies are based off of acreage. And so, you know, that's a whole nother conversation about kind of consolidation of small, and I say small farms versus large, because you can have corporate farms just because they are legally corporations for tax purposes that are still ran by families. So there's a lot of nuance there with kind of how we start labeling farms. But that's one of the big issues there. But then if you look at the types of crops that are, say, high on that list for subsidies, we tend to have these crops that mainly are connected back to the processed foods. The processed foods are the ones that are cheaper. They're cheaper because they're subsidized. Because again, the thought would be, well, if there's less of that being grown, then the price of the food should increase. But what the subsidy does is it helps ensure an income, and it helps keep the price for the consumer lower. So it's really messing with this market that we're supposed to have. And so that's where the conversation usually becomes, well, are we subsidizing the wrong things? If we're wanting to interfere into normal market practices, are we interfering in the wrong thing? What do y'all think?
Well, I think what I meant by education was educating like government officials and people that pass these laws and stuff, and then voters too, so that we can try and even out more what you're saying. I was asking if you guys think that would help.
What do y'all think?
Sometimes I don't feel like the government, like, it's just another stack of papers to them. You know what I'm saying? Like, their secretary may read them and kind of write like a sticky note and be like, hey, like, here's an overview, and not go into details really, so they truly do get educated. I think that's where we do have some issue. They truly don't want to get educated, I guess.
I think the education that you're talking about, Stephanie, is going to have to come from people in the community that are really wanting to like make a difference. Like, I don't think that like our class, who like if we came up with a plan and like sent it to like our representative, I don't know if it would make a difference, but like how those women went to Washington, like to like make that impact and to like show their like interest in like how much they wanted to change. Like, I think that's what it's going to take. Like, unfortunately, like I don't think, maybe this is awful to say, but like I don't know if like I personally, just because like I know it's wrong, could make a difference. Like, it's gonna have to like take somebody that's like living through it. I don't know, that's my opinion.
And I think a lot, it comes back to like the education system. Like, if they're taught at a young age, they're gonna take it up with them. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're gonna learn about it. Because I mean, we do have future governors and stuff in the classroom. So I think it does go back to teaching in the classrooms first, and then keep it educational throughout their careers.
So, you know, we do have ag committees in the government, and oftentimes, you know, and that's where like the budget and everything for the farm bill comes out of. A lot of people who serve on those committees do usually have some type of ag connection. I think the problem lies not only with what do we as citizens want them to know, but then we have lobbyists, right? So do you think the Wheat Association is gonna want members of Congress listening to citizens that say decrease subsidies for wheat?
Yeah.
We have conflicting parts, right? What do we do about that? Can we do anything? I have my own opinion.
I mean, essentially, it's whoever has the most money back in.
Yeah, I agree with that. Money talks a lot more than somebody standing on Capitol Hill.
I spent a lot, not a lot of time, but I've been out to the state capitol a few times, and there's a bunch of rallies going on during those times. And we were trying to get into the senators and all of our representatives. It was difficult because they were trying to avoid everyone that was outside trying to lobby.
Yeah, I mean, every commodity group that we have in ag usually has a lobbyist that's hired for them for that purpose. And it's just interesting. Again, things aren't as I don't want to say innocent, but as altruistic, I guess, as we would hope they would be. You know, we all, you know, people are looking out for their own interests and they're fighting for it. And so it is interesting to see how that impacts and reflects in our political policies that we have, for sure. Someone else throw out another good question. You guys on a good start.
It's not really, well, whenever, I don't remember exactly what it was, but the lady was standing there at the podium and everything, but it was talking about how they launched that new program and everything, but they were taking it out of the food stamp money. You know what I mean? Like, how does that, I mean, you're just taking away from something else that, you know, somebody needs, you know what I mean?
So we have something similar. I'm going to give y'all this example to then kind of help go try to explain like what happened there. So here in Oklahoma, there's an initiative on the ballot right now that you can vote for. So last year, Oklahomans voted to increase the amount of money that's put into Medicaid. I always forget which is the state level, Medicaid or Medicare. Anyways, Oklahoma citizens voted, yes, let's increase funding for Medicaid. Well, now, you know, typically what responses are to that, you know, is, okay, we've got to increase funding, so we need to increase revenue, right? The money isn't just going to come out of thin air. Some ways to increase revenue: increase tax, you know, or pull from other programs. The initiative on the ballot right now is that Oklahoma, again in the past, has passed, the taxes that were increased on cigarettes or tobacco goes into this fund that's supposed to pay for educating the public about the harms of tobacco use, right? Like that's where those taxes have been channeled to. This ballot initiative is now saying, well, instead of trying to find the revenue that Oklahomans voted and said was important to increase for Medicaid, we're going to now take this money and no longer put it towards tobacco education to pay for. So instead, again, it's avoidance of increase of taxes. And that's exactly what happened in that situation. We're going to increase funding. We think it's good to increase funding for school lunch, but we're not going to actually try to raise new revenue for it. We're going to take it from something else. And where they took it from was from SNAP. That's what food stamps are, the SNAP program. Does that make sense? So what's another question y'all had from the film?
My thing was like, we have help for the children, like the food programs, like in school and stuff like that. But like, I feel like there wasn't enough focus on the adults. Like the kids are getting a meal, 2 meals a day, but like a lot of times those parents at home would miss a meal so their kids could eat. Like why don't we help them? You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know if help is the right word, but like why isn't there a program set up for that, or like ways that we could help to make sure that like the parents get to sit at the table with the kids?
What are your thoughts?
I feel like there's less compassion towards adults. Like we talked last week, I'm not saying you, but like everyone was like, well, they go out and get manicures and do all this and we blame the adults. But now after watching the film, we're like, the adults need it too. So I just think there's compassion missing in that area, because it's like, well, they got themselves into that situation, the kids didn't. So we did that, we pulled money from the adults that can buy groceries and give it to the kids. So it's like, I think it's just a big compassion thing.
I think there's a lot of misconception. Like, this is really bad, but like we see certain sides of it on like news and movies. Like we see like poverty and like what it appears in Hollywood or how they portray it. And it's like, we have made these opinions and then like you watch this and you're like, so you've been wrong for 21 years. And so I think education has to start with like us. Like my dad is like the same way. He was like, well, if they want it, they can go out and fix it themselves. But we're not giving them the opportunities to. Like we're not providing them with like the knowledge, like preparation, the care to like go out and do like what they need to do for their families. Like, they truly are missing meals for themselves to provide for their children, and then like, and it's because like a misconception, in my opinion, that like people think that if they want to fix it, they can fix it themselves, but like they don't have the resources.
Do people only get into these situations because of their personal choices?
No.
What, like if you were to try to track how an adult gets into this situation to be food insecure, where they have to be on government assistance to have food for children, how would you try to explain how that happens?
I think some of it comes from those abusive households. Like, I know a lot of females end up back on food stamps and needing help because they do leave a situation and they literally have to leave with nothing. And they normally, the person that was abusive, they weren't allowed to have a job and go out and do stuff. So they don't have a resume. So the jobs that they are going to get are the really, really low paying ones, which again, they get put on food stamps and they go through all that.
I also think another thing is these people might be able to have really great jobs, but they don't provide any child support or anything. So ultimately, they're going to get a really bad job that will pay for the bare minimum so their kids are taken care of, pay for a roof over their heads and nothing else.
I mean, there's a lot of people who choose not to work only because if they went to work, their entire paycheck would go to daycare. And so it is better for them to stay home, which results in only one person in the family working. If they are in a marriage or any type of relationship, which then decreases the household income, which, you know, and again, you're like, man, childcare could really solve a lot of
I think
that.
this all goes how our society is set up. Our society, like the United States, is set up to keep the poor people poor and the rich people rich. That's how it is. And this is.
Why do you feel that way?
Why?
Or like how so?
I like how so. It's just how the system with the taxation and it's very in-depth, but I've had this conversation before with someone like off the wall, like at 2 a.m. But like how our society is so messed up, like through the government, and I think it's all messed up.
Yeah. You know, it's hard just to throw one dart and say this is the problem, right? But is it hard? Could we say as a whole, perhaps maybe we agree on it or we don't? If you're in poverty, is it hard to get out of poverty?
Yes.
Yeah. Because if you're in poverty and there's still bills to pay, you probably may work a job or 2 or 3, which decreases the time perhaps for you to get additional education that may help you get a higher paying job. I think we've seen that just sometimes now, just because you have an education doesn't mean you're gonna have a higher paying job, right? Sometimes I giggle, students will say to me, they're like, yeah, I want my first job to pay me $60,000. Like, y'all, my first job when I finished with my master's was $35,000. Like, keep on, you know, it just, but again, it's like we have this different level of expectation for kind of a standard of living, right? But it's hard to break out of that cycle unless you have help. And so sometimes if you've grown up in poverty, you don't have that additional support to help you do those things you need to get out of poverty. It is very, very hard.
To answer that question you asked a while ago, I think I learned that a lot of them are, like Angel said, she was just born into it, unfortunately. And like we're all talking about, like her parents obviously couldn't afford to send her to college or give her an adequate life of eating dinner every night. And so in turn, she was the same.
Yeah, that's one of the big conversations too with like student loans is, you know, we do have federal grants that are supposed to help individuals be able to get an education. But then when you have those loans to pay back and that loan's gonna take up half your paycheck every month, you're like, I'm still gonna live like I'm in college, eating ramen noodles with 5 roommates, right? 'Cause that's what everyone wants to do at 24, right? It's hard. I mean, that's why there's a lot of conversation about student debt too.
And then my next kind of focus in, why don't we have a next step up from snacks to help?
Like a transition?
Yeah, like a
Yeah, I wonder
transition, like, you know, for like 6 months, you got a better job, so for 6 months, we're not gonna give you as much, but like maybe 3/4 or a half, that way you can slowly save up, but also be okay.
I love the same with like childcare. Like,
Yeah.
she got a job and immediately her childcare was, oh, you're gonna have to pay now. Like, excuse my French, but how in the hell does that work? Like, you literally went from, okay, like, I can do this, like, I can make this better life for my kids, to like, now I have at least $150, she has to get $250 for her kids just to be taken care of while she is trying.
I want to do just, and this is just a little experiment to see, just on average, let's figure out monthly costs. How much do y'all pay for rent?
700.
Anybody pay more than 700? So I'll tell you, so you're paying, do y'all have roommates?
No.
Yes.
Yes. So when we were looking at moving here to rent a house for a family, the average cost in Stillwater for rent is about $1,200. So if you have roommates and you're paying $700 a piece, times that by how many roommates, and that's what it would cost for a family to rent that area. What are y'all paying water and power? Utilities?
My last bill was $228.
$228?
$350.
$250?
$350.
$350.
I live with 6 other girls, so ours is like 400 to like 500.
We're gonna go with like, again, if we're thinking of a family, roughly $250. What do you think?
700 is 200.
What do you think average gas bill for a family is?
Are you including, hold on, question, because this
Yes.
is serious. Okay, so my furnace is gas and my stove is gas. So during the winter, my gas bill goes up
Yep.
and my electric bill goes down because I have window units. So during the summer, my electric goes up, my gas bill goes down.
Right. Let's pretend this is, that's because I'm going off of the month of August, okay? So we're running the AC a lot. All right. What's gas going to be?
I have 48.
We're gonna say around $50. Okay. What are some other bills you're gonna have?
Wi-Fi.
Let's go with Wi-Fi. How many of y'all would say at this point, don't really need a cable bill, but Wi-Fi is pretty essential?
Yeah.
I pay our Wi-Fi and it's like 110.
Mine's 25.
25?
I pay 70 for Wi-Fi.
70? Let's just say, like, depending on the speed and the amount of people, let's go with an average of about $75 a month. With some more bills.
Groceries.
Is there anything else though before groceries, before we get to that food part, that it's like you're gonna have that bill come, and it's gonna be a certain amount and you gotta pay it?
Transportation, like gas and, or just car payments.
So we've got
Insurance.
gas, we've got insurance.
I don't want to be an adult. Like a
How
real
much
one.
do y'all spend on gas, average in
Are we doing gas or diesel?
gas?
Okay.
Probably about 100 a month.
Car insurance,
$3,000.
A month?
No, a year.
Oh. I was about to say, I think it's about 125.
We need to do something else.
okay, 125 would be on the low end. Let's go with like a 150,
For my truck, it's 200.
200.
175.
All right. Does this person have a car payment?
Probably.
Probably.
Well-
How many of y'all, unless you were given your vehicle or you outright bought it, have a vehicle that's paid off?
I just paid mine off.
What was the average car payment?
About 200. Real rent.
Okay, anything else? Payment wise that you might have?
Cell phone bill.
Cell phone? How much y'all pay for your cell phone?
Like $50.
50,
I pay $150.
150?
You have the actual data, like, coverage, and then if you didn't buy your phone outright, you can also probably be paying for
I
that.
would say like 225, like my phone, like I'm making payments on my phone. It's like if you have a new phone, unless you just bought it outright, then it's more expensive.
We're gonna lowball it, say around $100 probably.
If you have lawn care.
Lawn care. Do you think people who struggle with income have lawn care?
But I know like, so it kind of wasn't an option for me, like I have to pay that in my rent, I guess.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Like
Mhm.
it comes out of my rent.
Yeah, does your rent do that, trash and, mail?
No, so it's
Yours is-
700.
that's included?
So for 700, it's just the rent and then lawn care, and then I pay my utilities and gas separate.
I do 550 for us.
So we've got to think about whatever your base pay is and whatever job this person's working for. Even if the job says they provide health care, there's usually a personal cost to you that's taken out. So if we say this individual had one child, we'll just say one kid, how much do you think they pay a month in health care? 50.
Yeah.
We're gonna add, and again, this is a low average.
On my parents.
$100 a month. If they have one kid, what else are they paying for?
Dental.
Some type of daycare. And we're gonna say this child isn't in school yet. So roughly $700 a month.
What about dental?
So any type of just health, we'd include that probably in health insurance.
It's like
But what about-
vision, dental, and like
Oh, okay.
normal, like general physician stuff typically would help.
If you were on a limited income, would you opt into those things?
No.
Any other bills?
Mortgage?
Well, we're renting.
Oh, duh, sorry.
But like, what if your car like breaks down unexpectedly?
So like a
all the
rainy day fund?
unexpected,
Balance.
But like she was saying, she doesn't even have a savings, which is why she was like, she couldn't go to the next job up, because she didn't have savings to even transition.
So why don't we just budget $100 a month for any unexpected maintenance? That's low. I don't know if anyone, we're gonna just budget for that. Anything else?
I feel like we should.
You got pets, you got there, bills.
Groceries?
Doctor.
We haven't got there yet. We got pets, we've got,
But then you have like the diapers of the kid, which I guess falls under groceries, right? Or is that like?
we've got
the
like
child-
clothing, diapers. Oh, do y'all know how expensive diapers are?
Very.
Almost $30 a box. Man, February's gonna really start.
Now, I do have a question. Are you gonna go cloth? Are you gonna go cloth or are you gonna? But that's it, no, because I've seen a lot of parents transition to cloth.
No.
Yeah, very, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Not me.
One thing that we do, that we think helps, and I don't know if it's a normal thing, but every time we go to the grocery store, like from the moment we found out I was pregnant, we get a gift card. So we put it in our grocery budget. We get a $20 gift card, and we're saving those gift cards to buy diapers.
That's so smart.
Any other bills?
What about your Spotify?
Just like,
They don't get that, okay?
Netflix.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
we just got
most-
fees. We got your Amazon fee, Amazon Prime, Netflix.
But if they're that low in income, do
I
they even have
still
that?
really feel like people have Netflix.
Yeah.
Well, they have
They
Wi-Fi
can
up
split it
there.
between family members.
Yeah,
Let's say $50. There's usually $50
and
in
subscriptions and
fees.
stuff.
Yeah.
They have to entertain those kids somehow.
Okay. So, somebody added for me
ABC
what
One
is
and
all
Fair.
we don't have on here savings, we don't have groceries yet. What's this total?
Sounds like I need a sugar daddy.
So is that the parents just for one kid, or is that for like the family?
The healthcare?
Yes, like the health insurance up there?
So, all I can give you is my experience on this. Most companies, it's like whoever you're hired for, you can choose and you have to re-enroll every year. Like, I have healthcare through OSU, Chad has it through his business. So every year we can choose whether he stays on his, I stay on mine, and then we have to figure out which one to put our kid on. Or if it's cheaper, I could go on his, or he could come up, you know, like our whole family could be on one. But the rate increases per person that you add on there. There's like what they call like your plan plus a spouse, and then your plan plus a kid, plus your plan plus 2 kids, that kind of thing. I pay more than that a month for me and Will. And so that doesn't even include what Chad then pays for his health care with his company.
Is Will double covered?
No. 35.50. So we're at 35.50. How much do y'all spend on groceries, or do you think a family of 3 spends on groceries a month?
I was gonna say 4.
Oh.
700.
I was gonna say
How the
600.
age of the children?
Oh,
I'm gonna say 500, but this is including things like toilet paper,
a month?
cleaning supplies. Like, to me, groceries is anything I gotta buy at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Do y'all want it to be higher, or do you think?
It's probably gonna be higher.
What about
What's the
eating it?
question? Hold on.
How much do people spend on groceries?
For a party of 3?
I'd say higher.
I'd say
Higher.
higher. Hold on.
But aren't you like a
Does
party
the-
of 3, so you know what you're buying?
I know. I know what we
Does
do.
that include formula? Is the formula going in the groceries or is it going in
Going
the
in the
diaper?
groceries.
Well, she just said that.
Everything at the grocery store. You buy it for that.
Everything. is
Everything at
included, like-
Walmart.
Yeah.
I'd say higher.
And this is without eating out. This is assuming you're gonna have all meals at home.
Honestly, I would say closer to like 800.
Where are we at on that?
All meals at home are probably there. We're not even gonna do a budget for eating out, because again, we're gonna assume low income. So when we add that in now, okay, 42.50, times that by 12.
51,000.
So we need to have a household income of 51,000. And this is what, I mean, like, would y'all say this is basic? I mean, what could we take out?
Wi-Fi.
Cause,
Nope.
I mean, like, you could go to the public library for that.
You know,
Do we need a car?
Depending on where you
Probably.
live.
Depends on
you
where
were
you
in
live. If you live in a city, you
food
got public
desert.
transportation, right? But if we were living here in Stillwater, do we need a car?
Yes.
Yeah.
yes and
I mean, you
no.
could take
You
the
can
bus.
have the buses.
Any of y'all ridden the buses to go get your groceries?
No, they drive like
I
crazy,
accidentally
bro.
wound up at Walmart.
I can
missed
walk
my
to
stop.
Sprouts. I'll take my bike to Sprouts because I live right down the road.
I mean, we could find a different place to rent, right? But
I feel like these are such like basic things that like, I guess you could get rid of pets, but like I'm somebody who needs that serotonin level in their lives. What did you, oh,
that's one of the first things people cut. Y'all know that, right?
Yeah. We could lower the rent, like get find different, like, cause mine's a 2-bedroom house and it's 700.
I'm shut down by the business.
I don't think I know anyone in town as far as a family that rents a home for less than $750. And again, these are kind of like, maybe we can get by. Imagine if we were trying to figure out, this is insurance for 1 car, imagine if we were paying for 2. Right, so are there some families that are a 1-car family? Absolutely. daycare, again, maybe somebody decides not to work, right? Someone asked this question, and I kind of throw up this budget for us because I think, again, we hear a number when it comes to like these requirements for programs, and we think that's sufficient. But we've never actually really worked out like for what we consider to be an average standard of living, what does that actually cost? Someone said in order to be eligible to receive food stamps, family of 3 cannot exceed an income of $24,000 annually.
Jesus.
Can y'all get this budget down to $25,000? Can you take half of it away?
Probably not quite half of it.
What is that $24,000 based off of?
Also, compared to like Washington, where I'm from, Stillwater is a cheap place to live.
I was literally just thinking about like other places.
It's really cheap. Other college students pay $3,000 a month.
Yeah. So do you think that there's people who get left in the middle that are in between this 24,000 and 50,000 that just get left and forgotten about? Is that murky middle? That's where a lot of food insecurity happens, y'all. Because then, guess where, again, you're looking at the big parts of the budget, right? And you're like, well, maybe I can make some choices and I can take that down to 4. And so we buy ramen instead of the apples, right? Maybe I feed my pet Old Roy, right?
Don't need a phone.
Don't need a phone.
Can't you get like a burner phone?
Yeah, get the jitterbug, something. Do they still have it?
Yeah, my grandma has one. Or something similar.
Maybe I just don't pay this bill this month, right? Because I just can't. It's hard. It's really, really hard. And sometimes we just don't ever sit down and think about the numbers and with that, and like what is, not only just what's a livable wage, but also these things that we consider necessities, are they luxuries? And again, I kind of go back to that conversation of, are we going to view everyone as humans or not? And if we think it's a basic part of contributing or participating in society, do we create the haves and have-nots? What do we do with that? And so to challenge y'all even further on this, because I remember, your big assignment, like y'all have 2 worksheets that y'all are going to do in the next few weeks with some reading, but your big assignment that y'all have this month, if I have to take one, is going to be a SNAP challenge. So you mentioned $3 a day, right? I'm giving this to y'all now so that you have a solid 2 weeks to do it, because it's going to be an assignment that takes you a week to do it. So you can decide to start it tomorrow and be done in a week, or you can sit and mull it over for a couple days and start. You just need to plan between now and October 22nd to dedicate a week to this challenge. So you're going to get a sense of what life is like for low-income Americans facing hunger. By accepting the SNAP challenge, you're committing to planning your meals from a limited food budget. Now, I am not asking y'all to legitimately only do this, but this is going to be an exercise where you have to budget as if this was the budget you were on, okay? Average recipient receives $130 per month. You'll find a lot of different figures, but what we're going to go with for this assignment is that you're going to get $34 a week. So that's averaging to almost $5 a day. So a little bit more than what the film even said. So you have to plan a week of meals for yourself using $34. This is going to require you to go to the grocery store, look at what things cost. When you go into Canvas and you look at this assignment, there's a budget template for you that's empty where you can fill in, like, this is what I'm buying for the week. here's how much it costs, here's where I would get it from. And then I also have an example, Bill did it in the past, of like what a SNAP budget would look like for him, so you can see kind of what I'm looking for here. But yeah, you get roughly $4.15 per day for all your food and beverages. So you're gonna have to figure out what to buy.
I
All
have a
right?
question.
Yep.
So, I have like prepaid lunches for like my sorority, like they're already paid for, so like does that go into this or?
No. So you're going to assume you are a low-income American. So don't consider your actual situation right now.
Okay.
You're just imagining, if I really only had $5 a day to spend on food, what would I do for a whole week? And so you're creating essentially your grocery list and your grocery budget for that week. And so it's going to require you to sit down and get on Walmart.com and pretend you're filling up a grocery cart and seeing what things cost and what you can and can't buy. And so you can't get food, you can't accept free food from friends, you can't go to a free student function on campus that's going to give you pizza that night, because when you're working full time, you don't usually have time to go to those anyways, right? We're assuming that you're starting with an empty pantry, right? So if you need to buy ketchup, work it into your budget, okay? And no fast food and no takeout. So it's got to be stuff from the grocery store, because can you use SNAP fast food restaurants? And then what you're going to do on the back, if you'll look, each day that you're doing this, you're going to, for a whole week, you're going to do a quick reflection. All right, and so it's kind of just this reflection of your week-long SNAP challenge experience. And so I've got a question for you each day that I want you to respond to. And so you don't need to have 7 different documents for this. This can be one document that you go back to every day and keep reflecting on. But I would put like a page per question is what I'm looking for. So this first question is, once you sit down and do your shopping list, how does that look compared to what your normal shopping list looks like? Day 2, I want you to think about what would you possibly cut out of your current budget if you had to be on this. Okay, how would this be different if you had a spouse or children? All right, so you're going to be thinking of these questions for a whole week. It's due the 22nd, so I'm giving you 2 solid weeks, 2, almost 3. And you can choose somewhere between now and then to complete this.
So it's gonna be 7 pages long?
You'll have your budget in an Excel sheet, and then you'll have your reflection. Yep. Any questions? Think y'all can do it? Yes.
Does this say I can't have like cereal every day for breakfast?
You could. Yeah.
Even though it says don't repeat any meals.
Oh, maybe you have different kinds of cereal. Maybe you buy a little.
Okay.
That's what
That's what I eat.
Can't repeat meals. Okay.
Some days you ain't eating.
So you can't do like, you can't make like, I don't know, like a casserole and then eat leftovers?
Only one day that you can eat leftovers.
Could you skip meals?
Some people do.
I was gonna say, I don't know.
I don't understand why you can't repeat things, like, because like typically they don't make things that you can repeat, or?
A little bit of that, a little bit of it, that again, if you're thinking about in a family, does everybody like eating leftovers?
You have to, right?
Part of the
It's an option, okay.
here's part of the reason why we don't assume leftovers is because when this budget is established by our government, part of the claim is that you can go out and buy yourself 3 meals every day for 7 weeks on $35. And so by claiming that, they're saying people aren't repeating or eating leftovers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense now.
They're saying you can purchase 21 meals on $35.
What if we live together and we like
Y'all are separate.
separate?
Yep.
Okay.
Your own budget, your own budget.
Or with chickens.
Huh?
With chickens all week. Oh, yeah, that's good.
Okay, so mull on it. If y'all have further questions about it, you have plenty of time to ask me. We're not meeting for class again on Thursday because you have another documentary to watch. All right, so in the one y'all watched Thursday, it referenced a documentary from the 60s called Hunger in America. That was kind of the forefront of the huge kind of focus on food insecurity in the United States. Y'all are actually going to watch that documentary Thursday. So it's free, all right? It's free. The link is there on the October page for you. There is an assignment that goes along with it, so a worksheet that you need to complete and submit before we meet for class next Tuesday. All right? Enjoy watching that, and we'll see you next Tuesday.